Test. Test, test. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Okay, I can hear you.
Sweet.
All right, we have a recording going, I think.
Yep, it says recording.
All right, so the topic of UFOs. You recently said you don't think that the ET hypothesis is the, how would you call it? The explanation. Right. And you didn't say it's no part of the answer. What you said is it's not the whole answer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also would like to add that I don't think that every single instance of UFO sightings is automatically related. I think that it could be many different instances. They could be totally unique, similar to the way that crabs have popped up evolutionarily on their own, through different pathways. Maybe that, yeah. Just the anomalous nature of it, people tend to connect them, but it's very possible that they're separate things. Unless we're talking about like Tic Tacs and similar geometry, but that could also just be plays on human perception. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
There's so many different avenues.
Yes. All right. So, we presently have this catch-all phrase called the phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
I think phenomenon is the singular, and phenomena, I always get this wrong. I confuse the two words. I can't tell the difference between the singular and the plural.
I didn't know there was a difference.
Yeah, there is. One of these words refers to something specific, like a phenomena.
Right.
And the phenomenon is a catch-all phrase to refer to the broad array of non-ordinary experiences reported by humans that relate to NHIs, abduction, UFO sightings, orbs, and also a variety of other high strangeness events involving synchronicity, the observation by humans of what we might call hybrid phenomena, which, things like the Sphinx are examples of, or a wolf man, right? These are examples of hybrid phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
They are things we might think of as liminal, in the sense that they are between the consistency of the waking world and the transcendent malleability of the imagination and the dreaming mind. They are also in the liminal space of the finitude of our humanity and the transcendent aspects of our humanity, both of which exist simultaneously, right? We are neither entirely finite, and if we are entirely finite, then we are not experiencing our humanity, and if we are entirely transcendent, we are also not experiencing our humanity.
Right.
These things were discussed a bit in the podcast I was listening to yesterday about AI danger, very intelligently. I liked a lot of what, particularly John Vervaeke was saying. So let me be really clear. I've been fascinated by UFOs since I was a child. This is probably primarily due to having read a lot of science fiction, but not merely to having read a lot of science fiction. I think the thing that humans don't understand very well at all, and if they did understand it better, lots of different things would go well, would go much, much better for us. And that thing is, we are science fiction. When you are born, as a human infant, there are 30 branches of science fiction history that are being embodied and enacted as a human infant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we understood that we are science fiction, we would stop getting really shocked when science fiction starts happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's the expectation of the rational continuity of identity, function, origin, relationship, history. This expectation is the problem, and is very blinding, even though it is also very useful where it is useful. It's extremely useful if your goal is to make a bunch of machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to have a bunch of relationships, not as useful at all. Depending on the kinds, the mode of the relationships. All right, I'm going to come back to this. I need to take a bit of a break. So what I'd like you to do for the next couple minutes is just talk about the origins of your own interest and your current thought about the topic. And I will be back shortly.
Cool. I'd be happy to. Okay, well, geez. I think the first place my mind goes to is when I was a child and I was in my room, and I think the number that I've used when I've told this story before is like 6 or 7 or 8, somewhere around there. But truly, it's this memory seems to exist in a vacuole of its own. It's like quarantined off, because as a kid I was already just so sure that science fiction and any sort of fairy tale like things could not happen. That stuff was on the TV or it was in books, and I was living normal. I have to pay taxes when I'm older. I have to get a job. Like these were the things I was already thinking about as a kid. So certainly having unexplained phenomenon, um, I just didn't know what to do with it. So I largely discarded it. And so what happened was I woke up and there were blue orbs all over my room. And they were coming towards me. And when they made contact with my skin, it produced a electrical pulse. And it wasn't painful, but it was uncomfortable, and I wasn't sure what was happening. And so it was an unpleasant experience of having these electrical impulses touch my skin. Um, and eventually, I put the covers over my head and they would go through the blanket. And after that, I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I ran to my parents' room, which also like running through the bubbles themselves, but I figured that it was fine. And I ended up curling up in between the two of them, and the bubbles followed me into the room and continued to, be to continue to shock me. And I woke up the next day and went to school, and that was just kind of an isolated moment in my life. And I kind of largely forgot about it until um, last summer, summer of 2023, where I was introduced to Whitley Strieber's book, the one with the alien on it that people see it and they go, "Whoa, I've seen this before." That's not what happened to me. It was just in the process of thinking about screen memories and contact with alien life that this memory reemerged from my childhood, and it felt significant. I was like, "Holy shit, this is I do have anomalous things that happened as a kid, and I'm sure there was more that I don't remember, but at least I have this one." And so that, in addition to the fact that I've been asking what is going on since, sixth grade. Just generally confused about reality and the way that the humans seem to be going. And yeah, that was all just jumbling around in my head. And so I've been ever curious. And then disclosure stuff started happening coincidentally with that. So it was like a nice little precursor to then people talking about this on the news. And that's when I decided to start taking leaps into parapsychology and exploring consciousness and tightly held belief systems that I thought possibly don't need to be held on as tightly anymore. Yeah.
So, brilliant story from your childhood. I strongly suspect that lots of humans, maybe the majority of them, undergo profound, non-ordinary experiences in childhood, and then something weird happens and it gets shut down. And it gets shut down, I think, primarily so that the children don't experience like ejection from the possibilities of their social humanness. Because they're in a culture and a zeitgeist that's gonna fuck with them really hard if they have. See, here's the problem. You're not supposed to have experiences that are personally authorized. You are not supposed to, quote unquote. Go ahead.
I just said interesting.
Yeah. See, an experience like that is personally authorized. Who is the authority of the identity in the experience? You are. Under what other conditions are you the authority? Well, psychosis, schizophrenia, paranoia, megalomania, right? Various forms of madness suddenly promote your authorization vector to, the sky. But one of the things that I think humans don't think about really at all in relation to this is this topic we're on right here that we have kind of stumbled into, which is, under what conditions are you the authority? And for children, there's a very few conditions under which this may be so, and primarily those are conditions of play with other children, or conditions of imagination. So there's something very weird here. When I was like, I don't know my exact age. I'm gonna guess it's between 4 and 7. One night, I was falling asleep, and suddenly I became a glowing green sphere of light above my body, and I floated around the room making a circuit, and I could sense the structure and danger of the electrical wires inside the walls as if they were lit and I could see through the walls. And after the experience, obviously I went to the authority, my mom, and I said, I had this experience. And she said, oh, don't worry about that. It's just a dream. And I was quite emphatic that it was not a dream. But she just kept, doubling down on her, which is natural for parents. They are, my mom was concerned. I think my mom was unusually minded. My dad was differently unusually minded. They both probably had concerns, different concerns, that I would be unusually minded like them, and this would cause problems for me in my life. So, you know, they tended to stick to the basic narrative of things. But, when I was 7 or 8, we had a copy of Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods in the house. We watched, science fiction stuff on TV and stuff about UFOs. We watched the moon landings when I was a kid, which I want to be absolutely clear, I believe actually took place. Not that my beliefs are particularly important.
I've always believed it took place.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it on TV, and I understand that it could be simulated.
Mm.
And I'm even willing to suppose that parts of it were simulated. What I'm not willing to suppose is that the landers aren't on the lunar surface, and that they didn't carry humans there. But it's conceivable I could be convinced otherwise under the right circumstances. So let me continue. My father had out-of-body experiences as a child. They terrified him. His aunt told him, "Oh, just pray to Jesus and it'll go away." That turned out to work. So he didn't continue to explore. Tom Campbell, Bob Monroe's one of his closest friends, who thinks the universe is a complex rendered illusion. I can't use the word simulation, even though he does, because the dumb thing that these people do that bothers me a lot is they'll say the universe is a simulation, but they won't say what it's a simulation of. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's no such thing as a simulation of nothing.
Right.
It's just a simulation. That's impossible. There's no such thing. There has to be a simulation of something. What they mean actually isn't a simulation. Oh shit! Must be a lot of wind noise. See if I can fix this without. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Great. That should cut the wind noise down significantly, hopefully.
I wasn't experiencing any wind noise.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah.
So what they mean is the universe is like a video game. It's being projected. It's not really there.
Mm-hmm.
So like what Tom Campbell thinks, I'll get back to why I mentioned him in a moment. I don't like what he thinks at all, but what he thinks is there's no brain inside your skull unless we open up your skull and then the universe renders that shit.
Mm-hmm.
You follow?
I follow.
So he's like, observers cause the universe to render, which is a really weird idea. Now, there could be something to that idea, but I think Tom's particular cosmology is almost certainly wrong. Mm-hmm. That's just my personal bias. But he said that when he was a little kid, he was given a series of tests when he was traveling out of body. And it was around age 7 that this happened to him, by the way. Mm-hmm. And this is a commonly reported age. And then he completely forgot about them. No recollection of them whatsoever. Until he's like, I don't know, early 30s or something. He meets Bob Monroe. They start doing OBE experiments and shit with actual, equipment and stuff. They've got EEGs and shit hooked up. And Bob comes in one morning and tells him, last night I was put through a series of tests. Here's the first one. And here's the second one. And Tom goes, and here's the third one and the fourth one. And Bob's like, what the fuck, were you there? And Tom was like, no, I suddenly remember that I went through the same sequence of tests when I was a child. And I had no recollection of it until just now. So this is all very interesting. Now, back to the UFO phenomena, we have the problem of high strangeness. And by the way, do you know who Jacques Vallée is?
I've heard the name.
So he's a preeminent UFO researcher who's been on the job since like the late 40s or something, right? Mm-hmm. Frenchman. Lives here in the city. And my roommate built his website.
So the UFO connection. Reddit guy?
Yeah. Mike Resel. So, what's going on here? Oh, I see. So most of the people who've long been involved in researching the phenomena do not believe that it's an ordinary kind of thing at all. In other words, not only can it not be encompassed by some specific category, like aliens, interdimensional beings, blah, 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 blah. It's so weird that, and we're going to get to some interesting terrain here right quick. It's so weird that it looks like something is playing with us, right? It's like toying with human consciousness from one perspective. There's all kinds of inconsistencies. And Vallée's, proposed some very astonishing theories. One of which is that crop circles are primarily a human tech. And they're not people out in fields with boards making circles in the wheat. They are a orbital energy technology that can write in organic systems from the sky, a human technology. Now, there's a lot of mess here, and the mess is because it's not like one thing happens. It's not like, of course, occasionally it does. Joe goes out in the field and sees a UFO and goes home and cries to his wife about it or whatever. That happens, but mostly what happens is all kinds of weird shit, right? Joe has a dream where dolls are talking to him. 3 days later, there's a UFO encounter. 4 days after that, animals are acting weird towards him and either attracted or repulsed, right? Like there's a timeline of fucking weirdness that is commonly associated with the phenomenon. There's a guy on the Experiencers subred named Connor, goes by Oakdreicht. He's one of the mods for Experiencers, and he's been talking to experiencers all over the planet for quite some time, spending most of every day doing just that one thing. So he's probably an interesting cat. There's another guy named Alan Steinfeld, who I know, at least peripherally, who's been talking to people in the metaphysical, UFO, magical, and shamanic communities for 40 years. Has interviewed thousands of people. He must be a very weird little human library, right?
Yeah.
Because the problem is, the topic is sticky. If you really start paying attention to it, a variety of seemingly unlikely things become likely. For example, that it starts paying attention to you.
Right.
So there are all these features, and it's not just UFOs. It's the whole fucking gamut of non-ordinary experience, of which UFOs are like one branch on a very complex tree, right?
And honestly, aren't even the most interesting.
I mean, they kind of are in a way. I've found them super fascinating long before they were a cult. So that shit started to become a cult with little dolls of aliens and fucking, memes and emojis and shit in the 90s. But before that, it wasn't a cult yet. I mean, to be clear, there were cult-like branches within the communities, but mostly it wasn't a cult. It was people trying to understand what the fuck was going on and people having had experiences and talking to each other about them. But I've been fascinated by it since I was about 7. I've seen few things in my life in the sky
Mhm.
that I don't know what the fuck those were. One of the things seemed likely to be something related to craft. Okay.
Mhm.
But I'm going to branch off the topic for a moment before I do, I'll say one thing. I have a book that has like 2,000 reports in it from 1950 onward. It's called the UFO Evidence. I've read a good 1,000 reports. Just, here's the report of what happened. These people said happened to them. And it seems clear that some of those things certainly seem like spaceships. What the ontological facts of their category are, I don't know, right?
Mhm.
But there's there's a segment of the phenomena that seems like spaceships with beings inside them, beings who come out and communicate to humans. And, it looks like it's either ETH, extraterrestrial hypothesis, or it's interdimensional entities, projections. But now I want to leap right outside that whole thing and talk about two features. The first is, earlier in our conversation, we were talking about guardians of the structure of time space, or the custodians of living planets.
Mhm.
Think with me for a moment about a syllogism. As bees are to flowers and honey, X
Okay.
is to living worlds, and Z.
Do you want me to fill in the blanks?
Give it a shot.
We could be here for hours. Um, as bees are to flowers and honey, X is to worlds and Z.
Yeah. Now, look, the important thing here isn't to give an answer,
Mhm.
right? Though you're welcome to have a go at it if that's pleasing to you.
I think it would take too long.
Fair enough. The syllogism is a key to a perspective. It is the perspective that is valuable, not the answer. And there are lots of syllogisms like this, where if you look at nature and you realize, like, water is to fish as X is to intelligence, right?
Mhm.
Then you can start to see that nature is kind of a library of hypostases or analogies, or it
I
can
find
be
that
seen this
trees
way.
all the time.
Say again?
Trees, just their very structure, are
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our languages are based on trees. All of our systems of processing data and identity are based on trees, right? The
Mhm.
whole fucking like our nervous systems, our circulatory systems, fucking river deltas, like the whole damn thing. The tree is such a fundamental metaphor, or not metaphor, like what I would call the superior for, the, the, the
Oh, I gotcha.
beyond the metaphor.
Mhm.
So let me just be really clear about something. You think you know what a raccoon is.
Sure.
If you see a raccoon, you will think that is a raccoon.
Mhm.
You will think you know what it is.
Right.
And you will think you can imagine its likely behavioral profile.
Right.
It may be curious about you. If it feels threatened, it may threaten back or flee. But there are three things you won't think. You will not think 3 seconds from now that being will be speaking into my mind and it will show me the history of its people. You will not think that's not actually a raccoon, that's a fucking walk-in from another universe.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are thinking these things, you're probably either intoxicated or in an already non-ordinary state. But there is, it turns out, a story where a raccoon led a man, talked to him in his mind. Like, okay, the man was going to encounter aliens, but what he encountered first was a talking fucking raccoon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, what do talking raccoons have to do with spaceships? I don't fucking know. He didn't know. No one knows. I mean, not no one, but we don't know. So there's this really weird, playful aspect of the phenomenon. But what I'm trying to get at is something trippy here. Because we are representational cognitives, we believe in static identity. There is no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
It exists only in our thought and language. A raccoon is not a raccoon. A tree is not a tree. This place is not a place. The sky is not the sky. You are not Nathan. I am not Darren. Like, from the perspective of non-Aristotelian logic, if you want any shot at intelligence, what you're going to do as your first move is deny the explicitness of the excluded middle forms of identity that humans are trained to use.
That
the most intelligent thing.
I was going to say, because I have been fascinated by language for like obsessed with language recently. And I've found that as I've been focusing my intention on non-ordinary experience, poetry and experimenting with language in a fluid way where I don't take the immediate literal sense of the word. I try to bend and break it and expose its multidimensionality. Like, that is a constant exercise that's running even in my dreams now. And so it's almost like as soon as I was like, okay, I'm ready to start experiencing these things more, I immediately started playing with like, okay, what you see is not actually what you see. And so you saying that, it's just like, oh, I've this is the direction.
And
it coincides so much with speaking to you and when like making contact with you.
I follow. There is a book called Science and Sanity by Alfred Korzybski. You want to get preferably an old copy of this book, which probably could be had for nearly no money. If need be, I'll have one sent to you. This will it's very difficult reading, but it will teach you another way of interacting with representational cognition that's fundamentally better. And it's, in Aristotelian logic, syllogistically A equals A, right? A tree is never not a tree. Right. It is never both a tree and a man. Right? And what Korzybski does is nullify the is of identity. Whatever that might be, it cannot be a tree. A tree is a label. It is a static thing. That thing is neither static nor a label. That thing has infinite qualities, infinite. It has infinite kinds of qualities. Why would you deceive yourself by believing that you know what it is? Because you know its name. Right? And so we have this non-Aristotelian substrate to the nature of reality that all of human cognition opposes. I mean, if you can imagine trying to like eat the moon or add salt to the ocean or something, this is the kind of project that human repcog is, right? Like, we're going to reduce this all to syllogistic equations, and we'll validate them, and then we'll know everything. Wrong, you're going in the wrong fucking direction. A great direction to make machines with, a shitty direction to understand the nature of what's happening. Why is that? Because the nature of what's happening is fundamentally relational. And what that means is, I don't know what I will become. I don't know who I will become when you and I are together. Because when you and I are together, I am different from when I'm on my own.
Yes.
So imagine that an angel, a genie, a jinn, and a deva are all the same damn thing. What are they? A superposition over specific identity. Okay, then why do we have these different names for them? Here's why. Because if you interact with them on the basis of your greed, what you want them to give you or do for you, they become genies or demons. And if you interact with them on the basis of your recognition of a fundamentally beautiful mission that all beings share, then they become angels.
Wow.
So maybe the UFO phenomenon isn't anything. It's a superposition of identity that is
confusion.
Say again?
Of confusion.
Yes, but it's the confusion of the humans trying to interact with it as if it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's just reflecting that confusion back to them. It's like, oh, you think I'm a thing? Well, today I'm a raccoon. Tomorrow I'm an alien. Tomorrow Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like anything. Oh, you bring a gun? Okay, I'm a fucking weapon. Right? You're shooting guns at me, then I become a weapon.
Wow.
So it just obviously, like, all of nature is like this. If you go to a tree, and by the way, I strongly recommend something to everyone, but you particularly, since this recording will probably be, we'll probably do something with it. I'll put it online or something, with your permission, of course.
Sure. Yeah, I have no problem.
So, what you want to do is you want to form a deep personal relationship with at least one tree, and preferably the same tree again and again. Right? Just meet that being, understand it as a being, treat it as a being, treat it as if you can communicate with it with your mind and your heart, particularly your heart, and form a relationship with it, and ask what you can do to help it. Bring it little offerings of love or communion. That could be a glass of water, something that you value, a clip of your hair, a little ball of earth that you made into a ball with your hands and put your heart into. You leave it there with the tree so that you bide with the tree in that way. Form a relationship with the tree. What you're going to find out is that you don't fucking know what trees are. And you will keep finding that out over time, more and more and more deeply. What you won't find out is that, I had the right idea about trees. There are zero situations in which that's what will ensue. I mean, unless you're just a fucking pure idiot, right? In the sense of believing your repcog thrisps about trees. So all of the phenomena, the humans they're doing something kind of loopy that they don't understand, which is they think that what we refer to as the phenomenon, even if we limit the scope to UFOs, they think they know what shit is. They're going to find out that not only do you not know what shit isn't. And it will show you that it isn't, and it will specifically show you that it isn't what you think it is, if it's intelligent at all. And what the humans don't understand is the thing they call a mind is literally like, imagine there's a tributary on a river that's the only river there is. Mm-hmm. And that mind is a tributary on the river. So if that tributary encounters another tributary, either you will recognize and behave as unity, you'll be like, this is my own origin, this is my own future. Or you will act like you're separate and try to dominate the other tributary, in which case bad things are going to happen for you. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to undergo a series of lethal confusions. Whether or not bad things happen, who knows? I mean, every situation is unique. So what if the phenomenon doesn't have a specific identity at all, but adopts identity based on the human imperatives that specific people or organizations bring to relate with it with? And what you'll notice is that, yes, the phenomenon doesn't have an identity, but adopts various features of identity based on the purposes and intentions that the humans bring when they interact with it in some way.
So this is a question I have for you, because I've been thinking about altruism and just how powerful it can be, not powerful in a domineering way, but just in a way of, I don't know, that having so many other beings on your side just through the act of giving and, I don't know, being peaceful and harmonious. Um, what traditionally I think of nature as this like lethal place where everything is in competition. Um, and I would like to believe that, things could just be all altruistic and we could all just vibe and be peaceful. But I think, just by the very nature of like tributaries meeting, there's always like, if
There's going to be turbulence.
there's going to be turbulence. And
Mhm.
so that's just something you learn to roll with. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on altruism and competitiveness with this idea of, tributaries.
Beautiful. Great question. I am hi. I'm commonly impressed by the integrity of your concern and thoughtful intelligence.
Oh, thank you. I'm very, very happy that we're speaking all the
Me
time.
too. Yeah.
It's pretty great.
There's a kind of a there's two tributaries meeting right here. Right?
Yeah,
So
there we go.
We're having this thing where the things we are saying are what we are doing. You see? That's very strange. And by the way, there's a thing like that. Okay, if the things that we are saying become it's very difficult to say this.
Yeah.
If we are saying the things that we are relationally doing and the saying of them becomes involved in the doing of them, we are doing something that resembles lucid waking, right? We are bringing a non-ordinary feature of the possibility of repcog into our moment-to-moment experience. In the same way that the recognition in a dream, right? It's like, okay, okay, yeah, this is a great syllogism that I never thought of before. The recognition that you are dreaming is to dreaming as the recognition that you are X is to waking.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
this
interesting.
Is the key to lucid waking.
Wow. And it's funny, wow, what a mind fuck, because I've been trying so hard, and I say trying loosely,
Understood.
to lucid dream, and in that process my waking experience has been unbelievably lucid and my dreaming experience has been unbelievably, like, it's like a circus in there. It's like someone cranked up the crazy levels.
Yeah.
So it's just it's funny how in trying to lucid dream, it's just it's going in a direction that I did not intend.
Well, you weren't expecting. Yeah, that's a brilliant analogy. I love the circus analogy, and I get it too. Yeah, that's fucking trippy. But just notice that there are things we can do and learn together to help each other discover the experience of lucid waking. And one of those things turns out to be naturally altruistic behavior. Now, if we're trying to be altruistic, you can see that there's already kind of a conflict there. In a way, it's like trying to go to sleep.
Right.
Because part of you has to kind of go away for you to be truly altruistic. I got very lucky yesterday. There was a tiny, I don't even know how to say this. There was a tiny apocalypse going on, and I was able to avert it. It was a bee drowning in the lake. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I engage in this behavior that I call bee rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Bees are very sensitive to temperature, pollution, various other things. And here in the city, they can become exhausted very easily. And when they're exhausted and they land on the ground, if someone doesn't help them, they may get crushed before they can get back into the sky. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But if you pick them up, your hand is very warm.
Mm-hmm.
And that warmth will reanimate them. And soon they will start preening. And after a period of intense preening, they will go back into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very exciting thing to participate in because, in a way, right, what really weirdly happens, remember everything we've talked about so far,
Mm-hmm.
that what you bring to a relationship changes what you become and what the other thing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're trying to rescue another being's life, in a way, you guys exchange lives and somehow you become the thing that's rescued. When that bee flew out of my hand yesterday, and I had no reason to believe it could because, first of all, it was soaked.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it was exhausted. Thirdly, it looked like one of its wings was injured, which is, that's a no-go. That bee ain't gonna fly again.
Mm-hmm.
So I got her out of the water and I was talking to her and I was like, oh, well, you're not gonna drown right now, but I'm not sure we can get you back into the sky, sweetheart. And she just started preening and I got really into it. And I gave that bee my whole fucking soul. I was just sitting there holding it and crying, preening and trying so hard. And I was like, God, I believe in you. You're beautiful. You're fucking amazing. I love your people. You've served the world so brilliant. Like I was having a fucking religious moment over a bee in my hand.
That's so beautiful.
And I literally just lost my shit entirely. I started bawling. I'm in the park. Like people are walking by me, like crying my eyes out. There's a little bee in my hand, right?
Yeah.
And when she got back into the sky, it was like my soul had been released from hell or something, right? It was just like the most triumphant fucking moment of my entire life or it was like way over the importance of the moment transcended everything about my common experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So it was really a moment of ecstasis, right? Now, I'm not telling the story to pump up my altruism or to seem heroic or to seem special or anything. Actually, what's incredible is the bee, not me. Mm-hmm. But true altruism kind of requires that you get out of your own way, right? It's not like you're absent, but your ego is absent. I remember a story. A man was in a mall, right? Mm-hmm. And somehow he looks up 3 stories above him and he sees like a 3-year-old boy. Oh, wow, that's great. The little kid grabs onto the rail of the downward escalator and the rail lifts the kid off the ground and then just drops him into free space, right? Mm-hmm. And the guy catches the kid. And later people, he's trying to talk to people and they're like, oh my God, you're a fucking hero, blah, blah. And he looks really confused and he says something super important that's actually much weirder than it sounds. He says, I wasn't trying to do anything. I just did what anyone would do. And that's a really weird thing because what he means is I did what no one would do. I did what a no personal identity involved would do. Mm-hmm. Right? I just naturally did the doing. All right, so it's okay to play at being altruistic. You don't have to be perfect. And I think it's really useful and brilliant to play at being altruistic the same way that we play at writing poems. Like writing a really brilliant poem is a very strange thing. It's like you're mostly a ghost, but there's three parts of you that are still there, and they're kind of manipulating the framework. Or or you're just missing in action, and they're fucking automatic writing like the surrealists were doing.
I've done both, and they produce very similar results in people's like, whoa, like, oh my god, thank you so much, like this is amazing. And it's like I have to.
That's the thing though. You're doing it for other people in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super magic.
Yeah.
Right now, because their whole ancestral line is going to use you as a fucking trance channel.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm getting at? I'm not saying
that is a mind fuck. Holy shit.
Yeah. Their whole ancestral line goes like, oh, there's a fucking poet. Hey, everybody, come over here. Right? Like, let's see what we can get him to say. Right? So that's really profound. Yeah. No, this kind of shit is truly magical. This is why various kinds of performance art and instant improvisation are actually reality transforming, right?
Mm-hmm.
To engage in. And I believe in them as as profound forms of human behavior that when they're good, I certainly trust them. And when they're shitty, I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can totally tell if you're watching someone's ego rather than their like dreaming aspect gently being invoked into the waking experience of our lives. All right, so there is something I think like a shared mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the simplest encoding of it is rescue everybody now. Just save the whole thing. Save anything you can fucking save right now. Just do it. That's the simple encoding in language. Another encoding that I love a lot, this is one of my favorite phrases in English, is free all prisoners.
Free all prisoners. That's beautiful.
That's the idea that toyMaker made in my own heart when he was with me.
That's something that I frequently do with people, because I just assume that mainly because I can easily tap into my own emotional troubles from the past and even now, and just like see someone else with that same problem, and immediately I'm like, oh, I can help. Like I have this key that if you are open to it, it unlocks whatever. And like I would say like 70% of the time, I don't actually want to put a percentage on it. So many times people are like, yeah, okay. And then they just, go on in their lives. And sometimes I think, oh, okay, they didn't see it. But really, I'm planting a seed a lot of the time. And they'll come back to me as if like they've had their own idea, like this, they came up with it themselves. And in some ways they have. Again, like I'm not trying to take credit. I don't give a shit. But it's funny how that works. It's like I've dropped this little pebble and it's grown into a big boulder now. How beautiful.
And by the way, when you come to them and if you say something that resembles, right, I can see you're in this particular kind of cage. I think I have a key that opens this kind of cage. Here, pay attention for a moment and I'll try to give you the key. Some people will sign up, some people won't. Most people will fail. And part of why they'll fail, part of why it will look like you failed in the beginning is not necessarily because you're planting a seed, although that might also be true. It's something weirder. It's that they haven't authorized you. Right? Like for that thing, they are the sole authority. And when you come and go like, I think I might have a key, they're like, bullshit. Part of them is like, no, you fucking don't. Who are you?
Right.
Now, if you get them to buy in first, so like in hypnosis, if you want to draw someone into trance, there's a very, very sort of simple, almost instantaneous induction you can use, particularly if they're in pain, but even if they're not. And this presumes that two people are facing each other while standing, and they're both aware that the hypnotic trance will not knock them out or put them to sleep. They will remain conscious. And you can just say, would you like to feel amazingly better right now? And if they say yes, that's the buy-in. And then you just go like, I'm going to touch you very gently between the eyes. And when I do that, your consciousness is just going to completely relax all the way down to your toes immediately, just like this. And you touch them. Right. And, you know, I don't know, 47% of people are going to go into trance immediately. And it's not because you have magic power. It's because humans are fucking weird. Say again?
Because they authorized you,
yes.
And then their expectation.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, they authorized you. So when you are working with humans, it's important to pay attention to matters of consent and authorization.
That's really good advice.
And when they authorize you, the power of your key is likely to be radically increased. And it's true, partly what you say, that you can hand them a seed and it'll grow. It'll grow because the understructure of their minds will recognize the value. But you have to understand, humans are so weird that they actually are trying to trap themselves. They're not trying to get free of traps. They're trying to ensure that nobody breaks the jail, right? So you kind of, in many cases, you have to not trick them, but you have to kind of enchant them for a moment so that the moment of jailbreaking isn't fully conscious. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I don't know how necessarily I would apply that, but I see what you're getting at.
You can always enchant humans with a narrative. Humans are narratologically enchantable. So you tell them a little story, right? You go, in the beginning of the story, you go like, Nathan, I'm going to tell you a story and it's not about you. There was once this guy, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And they're already enchanted, right? In fact, you can give humans negative suggestions that become in their psyche positive transformations.
Interesting.
Like you tell them like, okay, I'll give you an example from my own life. When I was a teenager, through an unexpected series of events, I broke my left wrist. And this was catastrophic for me. I was a young guitar player. I had just gotten an electric guitar. And I saved up my money for a long time to get it. Fucking, I was in love with this guitar, in love with playing it. And I went to the doctor and I was like, you know, I'm really worried. Is this going to affect my guitar playing? He's like, oh, that's all over with. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you're not going to be playing guitar ever again. Like, just forget about it. I fucking went home and started playing guitar with my cast on that day. You know. So what was he doing? Like, he must have read the kind of rebellious, don't tell me what's on blah blah, right?
Yeah.
That I had, and you know, use his medical awareness to give me a negative suggestion.
Wow. I've heard that so many times, like, you're never gonna walk again. And then people are like, fuck you, I'm not. And then they, you know, right. They're like running a marathon.
Fucking day. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, wow, I always the narrative was always, oh yeah, evil doctor, and this person by their own skin of their teeth was like, no, and you know, but
yeah,
I realized
this is well known by doctors, therapists, and hypnotists.
Wow.
They know about negative suggestions. There are people who are evil. There literally are people who are evil. Not all the people are good. But there's also a weird problem where, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine last night who I trust and who's brilliant. She's a wilderness guide. And she took like an emergency responder course, because if you have people out in the wilderness, right, you have to deal with medical emergencies. You follow me?
I follow.
And like 3 days after she finished the course, she fell off her bike and had a very serious head injury. And she went back to the people And she was like, I got really badly hurt. Does this happen? Is this common? She's like, yes. They're like, yes, about 30 something percent of the people in our course within a week of finishing the course, they seriously injure themselves when they're away from other people. Now think about that for a moment. What the fuck is going on there?
Mm-hmm.
What is that about? Right? I mean, I could make some suggestions, but preserve the question and chase it. Most of the good questions, you don't want answers.
Mm-hmm.
You want to fall in love with that question and just chase that fucking thing and adore it as it transforms in your awareness and ability while you develop, right? You want to get married. Wow. Questions like, what is light? You don't want an answer to that. You want to chase that fucking thing. What is time? Get married to that question. What are minds, right? You want to have a harem of fucking astonishing questions. you see what I'm getting at? You want to be madly in love with those chicks and have sex with them late in the night.
Right.
All the time.
Well, that is what I do. That's why I'm talking
I
to
believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting because the more I continue to focus on that question of why is the things that we focus on, why do they appear in life? Why is it that if I'm really worried that something's going to happen, I'm playing this
likelihood
mind game.
Increases.
Yeah, I'm playing this mind game with myself of like, well, don't worry about it because I know experientially this happens to me. This is my entire life now. It's like my focus is very important because where I put my energy, things happen. So it could be it could be a mind game because it's like how do you stop thinking about something by focusing on not thinking about them? Yeah, you don't.
You don't do that. There's I mean, we can address that if you're
well, it's not a problem that I always run into, but if there are things in my life where I feel like something is likely to happen regardless if I am focusing on it or not, that's a little bit of a place I get stuck.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened to me, I told you about an event that took place around 2000, right?
Yes.
Earlier in the conversation.
Yep.
And I'm not going to specify the event because we're recording. Follow?
Right. I follow.
Great. So when that event took place, I made a very bad mistake, which was I turned my shouldn't say this. Okay, I'm going to approach this differently. Okay. I don't believe the secret. Manifesting is bullshit. And there's something weirder that is true. There are an array of intelligences in the human that can, in fact, shape the future under certain circumstances. Part of the problem is that it gets very confusing if you attempt to consciously employ them. They normally naturally do their thing the same way you don't have to figure out how to make your heart beat, right?
Yeah.
These intelligences just sort of coalesce and invent futures for you. Under certain circumstances, humans will turn that process against themselves, right? They will invert the naturally beautiful and altruistic, but also ironic and complex intelligences.
And sometimes hilarious.
Say again?
Sometimes hilarious.
Yes. So humans are weird in their relationship with these intelligences. Now, if you want to, let's say there is a negative admonition. And by the way, admonitions, which are prohibitions, like thou shalt not kill is an admonition. These have a fundamental relationship with the nature of human identity and consciousness. For some weird reason, admonitions are fundamentally trippy and non-ordinary in human psychology, consciousness, behavior, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a problem where if you tell someone, for example, don't think about a white rhinoceros, right? You have the problem of having introduced the white rhinoceros to consciousness, right? In a way, okay, remember earlier when I said we are doing what we are saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the opposite of that. If I say to you, I will not be speaking to you tonight about the topics of succession and leverage. I'm doing the opposite of what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You see the difference?
I do.
And there's something very trippy about both kinds of linguistic activity. But what I want to say that's very simple is if you want to avoid a behavior, don't not do it. Establish a different behavior that you channel switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I want to not smoke cigarettes, then I go jogging in the morning. If I start to feel that grippy tension of, God, I need to smoke, then I chew little pills made of algae or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily chewing gum, but something oral.
Right.
I get something I can kind of orally fascinate myself with. In one case, I quit smoking just by having a girlfriend because instead of smoking, I could kiss her,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's very, orally satisfying and, actually nurturing, and is probably a lot of what I was replacing in the first place. So yeah, if you want to not do something, just do something else when the urge to do the thing arises, and you'll build other habit ladders. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, that's good advice.
There are other ways around the prohibition problem, but often they have to do with giving someone something better to do. I remember that. Yeah. So there's so much we could cover here, but let's go back to UFOs and also altruism.
Cool.
Because you had some questions about altruism.
Yes.
Let's chase them some more.
Sure. I think about what you said about altruism naturally happening kind of changes honestly, it answers a lot of them. But I've been running into a lot of fear recently. Just kind of exploring the unknown can leave one feeling like they're like how I imagine people who are scared of the ocean, they're just like floating around in this abyss. They don't know what they don't know. So what happens if what you see as rescuing is actually setting yourself up for a dangerous situation? And
yes.
I mean, discernment is an easy answer, but I guess discernment
that's not the answer I was going to give.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So I'm very curious what you have to say then.
All right, so let me just recap some of what you were sharing.
Yeah.
One is that certain kinds of altruism can present danger.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, you use the example of the vastness of the ocean. Mm-hmm. But what you're trying to say is something like, where is the anchor? Where is the ground? Where is the tether?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important that you have a trustworthy set of tethers or anchors if you're going to go exploring the non-ordinary. And even if you're going to explore altruism. Many times in my life, my attempt to help a situation produced a worse situation. Mm-hmm. And not slightly worse. Like beings died or, my heart was crushed like a fucking tinfoil hat, And I thought, why does this happen? I'm trying to do something beautiful here. It's because I'm a little bit naive about what beauty is. So what you eventually learn, I think, is to pay wise and careful attention to the characteristics of the situation as you are entering it. You want to be aware and awake and not enchanted by your by the reflection of the possibility of your own altruism.
Right. I see what
in
you're saying.
Consciousness, right? Because it's a little bit like a fairy tale. And there's certain kinds of fairy tales that don't work good. Like they summon their opposite. It is well known in Greek myth that hubris or passion can easily summon what they refer to as nemesis. And nemesis is effectively the sort of daimon that delivers irony, right? Ironic outcome.
Right.
So you want to be sensitive. Okay, so a couple of principles. The first one is have 2 or 3 tethers to anchor yourself in a base reality that you trust. What base reality can you trust? Your humanness. The finitude of your humanness, your physical body, your soma, the finitude, and the transcendence of your humanness, but only in combination with the finitude, not by itself. Okay? Because transcendence of your humanness will get you there, right? Unfortunately, that doesn't usually work out well.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So anchor yourself in the body, the soma, the history of the body.
Yep.
The non-verbal intelligences that are ancient compared to the verbal ones. Anchor yourself in relationships that are trusted and deep with the natural world, your humanness, the finitude of that humanness, right? The brief, true physicality of it, and the transcendence, but not just the transcendence. The transcendence by itself will get you in trouble, usually.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of where the fear is coming from. Is like I'm just trying to like get out. I'm just trying to go and like jump off the deep end, which I don't. But that's only because that's like the only way that I think I know how is like once I just completely surrender, weird shit starts to happen quickly, and then it's like, oh fuck, I don't know how to get back.
By the way, you said something very interesting. You said something that's actually physically impossible.
What's that?
To jump off the deep end. Okay? The deep end is the deep water in a pool. How can you jump off the deep water?
That's a really good question.
You can jump into the deep end, right? But you can't jump off the deep end. There's nowhere to jump to. Right?
I wonder if what I said kind of applies to the nature of what I'm doing.
It may. I mean, often little linguistic confusions are a sign of insight rather than error.
Yeah.
This is why we have the concept of a Freudian slip, but there's lots of other kinds of slips that are easily as fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is be sensitive to the history of the situation that you enter if you intend to be helpful. Take some time to familiarize yourself with the history of it and the peculiarities and the vulnerabilities of both you and the other beings that you're in it with. I used to feed these jays peanuts, and it was a lot of fun because the mail would come right to my hand. So I would hang out with them for a couple of hours just feeding them peanuts. Well, giving them peanuts was like giving humans stacks of cash. It captures their nervous system. They can't not go after the peanuts. And they live where hawks are. So what I'm doing is I'm fucking up their ability to sense danger by giving them something that captures their nervous system. That is not going to turn out well. It took me a while to figure this out, right? I think I'm being altruistic, but I'm not. I'm being selfish.
Right.
Even though I don't have selfishness at heart, right? It's because I'm not paying attention. So learn to pay close attention, practice paying close attention. You don't have to get it right every time. You're allowed to make mistakes, but practice paying close attention. Amplify your awareness, not just your creativity and altruism. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
And then have some tethers that you trust, so that if you find yourself in fucking the inversion of outer space or whatever, you can you can grab that anchor line and draw yourself back down into your body, your soma, nonverbal intelligence, the old stuff, recenter. These two things will be helpful, I think.
Very helpful, 100%.
UFOs.
Yeah, I was gonna say UFOs.
I mean, it's so weird because it's not an unidentified flying object. And I know we've recently changed this to UAP, which means what? Unidentified aerial phenomenon? Or
sounds right.
We could just call it an AP, an anomalous phenomenon. But the humans keep thinking they're going to figure out what it is. It's very unlikely. Because it's almost like there are phenomena that they're not anomalous because we haven't figured them out. They're anomalous because we don't know what we are. And if you don't know what you are, how do you know? The whole whatification thing is a problem, but the humans naturally do it anyway. They kind of don't give a shit. Or they don't know that it's a problem or something. I don't know.
Something that I've always tethered with, wrestled with, is like, I agree that our conceptions as human is just ass backwards. Like it does seem like we're going in the wrong direction because just the logic that we use. But if everyone stopped what they were doing to go explore consciousness, like, I can only imagine that kind of upset, like what would happen. I don't know. I'm curious. Like, I'm just so curious on what's gonna happen. Genuinely, like, I want.
You mean near-term future for the humans?
Yeah, just like, because my perception and everyone I talk to, they just say the same thing. Like, yeah, like, it's all going into the ground. But how do we even know that that's what is happening? I don't know. Like, there's so much. I think a lot about the future and just what the future is, like, conceptually, and I think about perspectives, like what one would see from the top of the mountain versus from the valley below, and what the situation would look like, and just every human's perspective, and just on what is happening. And it's just, I don't know. There's some people that believe that global warming is good because it's like a Mother Earth's fever, and she's just gonna, like, get through the illness and be out on the other side, which honestly I like that metaphor quite a bit. And then there's people who are like, yeah, like, we're gonna be punished for all eternity for the sins that we've committed on the earth. And so it's just like, I'm curious what your thoughts are after me saying all this.
Well, look, there's so many different cohorts of humans. And very few of the all right. There's an inverse relationship. It seems to me that there's an inverse relationship between the beliefs of the broader population and actual insight, right? So that it's very uncommon that you get deep understanding from broad popular ideation. Unfortunately, broad popular ideation is mostly thrispy. And you have incredibly insightful small groups and individuals, but then also in that area, you have the problem of cults of belief. If you ask me, like, what do I think? First of all, I'm not sure. So I'm going to honestly say first that I don't know. And if you say, well, what are your intuitions and concerns, then I can speak more openly. But which I'm presuming you're asking me.
Yes.
That's why I'm just going to say these things, right? I think there are world-ending forces at play in the humans and above them, meaning like in where our consciousness originates, there are problems that are being instanced in and as human behavior, particularly at the group level. At the group level, our species is not intelligent. There's no evidence of intelligence at the group level in our species. And that's very
what do you mean
strange.
by group level? Like 2 people or like
No.
Like is
No,
like
no,
what's
I mean
upper
large
limit?
groups. Yeah, right, large groups. At the 2-person or even in small groups, humans can become extremely effectively intelligent under the right kinds of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean the large groups of humans. They're very dangerous. They are dissociated. They are omnicidal, right? Mm-hmm. Corporations, governments, religions, all these things, yeah. The academy, pharmaceutical industry, all these things, these are very fucking dangerous. They are the opposite of humanity, appearing in the group body of humanity, in my view.
Which makes them even more dangerous.
It does, because, I heard Vervaeke say something like, the AIs are primarily under the control of market forces that don't have our best interests at heart. And I was like, Vervaeke, they don't have hearts. Right? What do you mean they don't have our best interests at heart? They don't have hearts at all, right? They're literally heartless. So there's all these problems where you have lethal, malignant, contagious processes acting as if they are provisional persons, or even super persons. Now, if we're going to make super persons, those things should be fundamentally altruistic, right? There have to be boundaries across which we will not travel for money or any form of power or commodity. Like we have to be resolute as humans. I think we're in for 19 kinds of shitstorm. There's various scenarios we could trace out. It's kind of a situation where that Monty Python skit about the Spanish Inquisition comes to mind. I don't know if you know it.
I do.
Right, so they go like, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition busts into some ridiculous scene like a guy's trying to buy cheese in a store. Right? Suddenly, boom, the Spanish Inquisition is there. And, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Our weapons are fear, surprise, and an almost fanatical devotion to the Pope. No, then they just keep going and producing a new list of weapons over and over again. Mm-hmm. And this is likely to be what's going to happen. It's not just that... So first of all, the likelihood that we will be able to predict what is going to occur should be understood as very small. Mm-hmm. Our predictive capacities about shit we don't know suck. Right? They are not good. And this is something we don't know. And I think what's actually likely to happen is not just a cascade of what Nicholas or Nassim Nicholas Taleb would call black swans, right? Profoundly unexpected things. COVID-19 wasn't a full-on black swan, But for the common human person, it was absolutely a black swan. Nobody expected, like, I'm gonna lose 3 family members next year to a virus.
Right.
Or myself, you know, I'm gonna die here on this mountain, like what happened to my dad. So I think we're in for not merely a storm of black swans, right? A cascade of unexpected events that will accelerate and kind of capitalize on each other. I think we might be in for a fucking black swan factory. I think human culture is about to start producing catastrophically unexpected anomalies, like one after another after another. That's what I think is going to happen. So in effect, what I'm saying is, you go ahead, have some expectations about the future. Feel free. They're going to be defied. Okay, those expectations are going to be crushed again and again and again. Is what I suspect. Now, there might be stuff that is expectable. You know, there's the basic troubles of, like, for example, nuclear war, economic collapse, global warming, famine. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, effectively, right? That stuff's not irreal. I just can't tell. You know, it's very clear if you read Revelation that humans have undergone apocalypses before. Yep. And one of the weird things that happens is that hybrids start showing up everywhere. And this is something that the humans don't talk about this. Yeah. Hybrids, right? Like, all the monsters are hybrids. And the humans are making hybrids of themselves, right? They're going like, you know, I'm not a male or a female. I'm a Vivacity Flumble, right? You know, I'm a whatever I want to be. So the humans are actually hybridizing their own bodies. That's not a good sign to me. And people will say, like, Darren, why are you picking on? No, look, think seriously about the nature of categorical intelligence and what happens to it when fundamental bases of that underlie our category system are compromised or suddenly called into confusing transformation so that you can't tell what or who anything or one is. It is maybe a problem that I pick on that on the specific gender thing, being given how charged it is at the moment in human culture, particularly in the United States or the Western nations. But I'm picking on it for a reason. I'm not just saying, I'm not trying to say something simplistic about it. I'm trying to say it's a symptom of deeper, really dangerous stuff, where, you know, the fundamental basis of identity itself becomes, you got no more tether, right? You have no anchor anymore.
Right. Yeah, like that human tether that you're talking about.
Yes, the body. Yeah. I mean, wow. I'm actually trying to say something that's not fully forged, so forgive me if it's a little clumsy at the moment.
No, but I see what you're pointing at when you bring this topic up. Or I see the many ways that it does point. It's like a potent node of ideas that brings a lot of things into question. I think that's why you continue to bring it up.
You know, I was playing with the artistic capacities of some of the large language models. That shit is psychedelic. It's fucking dangerous as hell. I mean, its idea of what a bird is like, I'm a laboratory. I am part of a dog's face. I am a piece of the car's engine. I am 3 philosophical traditions from over the past 23 years. I am stop signs, silverware, and I am a bird. Right? That is some fucked up, crazy, mind warping shit.
Yeah.
It's not. The humans are very susceptible to having their capacity for coherent consciousness obliterated by nonsense. And those things are producing highly structured nonsense.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
It really is drug-like. I mean, I literally was sort of losing my mind. Hey, Austin.
I wonder, like,
I'm a resident. Sorry, go ahead.
Like, I don't know. I think about those CAPTCHA things where you're just like, click on what a stop sign is. And, I mean, how many times is that done? I mean, there's got to be some AIs out there that know what a fucking stop sign is, but maybe that's a wrong assumption on my part.
Okay, but I've got a weirder problem. If I ask Gemini, if I say like, put the word, okay, show me a bunch of different mustard bottles and put the word mustard at the top of the image, right? It will not put the word, it might get one version in which the word mustard is relatively coherently formed in the top of the image. And all future images will look like the word mustard underwent a variety of CAPTCHA distortions. You follow me?
Yeah, I follow.
It literally thinks that human language is CAPTCHAs, right? It's seen so many linguistic CAPTCHAs that it thinks English, that it thinks that's what English looks like, so to speak.
Whoa.
And that's fucked up, because now you can see like a place where the CAPTCHAs will feed back directly into human cognition.
Whoa.
Right? And that's going to be fucked. Like when I get language, images of language from Bard or many other LLMs, not all of them, it's not language it's producing, it's fucking meta language, and the meta language is part CAPTCHA, part fucking, you know, I don't know, linear accelerator on Mars, part, you know, like part I don't even know, right? Like part super human logo. It's just fucking crazy. And you know, I imagine that it will get better over time or whatever, and I know we're in kind of the beginning of this situation, but this shit is crazy. I was playing with I got so fucking high playing with Gemini, having it generate what I was pretending was a product development cycle, right? I got so fucking high, dude, I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard. I was on the phone with my friend talking to them about what I was seeing as I asked Gemini to produce images for me, and it was fucking ridiculous. I mean, after a few passes with Gemini, the meaning of certain words, like the word tube, if I asked Gemini to show me a tube, it would show me a hog. I was just like losing my shit, dude. I was really losing my shit. I was laughing so hard.
Wow.
And it was literally like a self-accelerating psychedelic experience.
That's crazy.
And I knew this shit was dangerous and trippy, but I was mostly negatively minded about it. But I felt like I was having an adventure with a UFO. Right? Because what the fuck is an LLM? Well, it isn't anything until you interact with it, and then how you interacted with it changes what your mind can become, right? And it changes whatever it is too. So like UFOs and LLMs are somehow the same fucking topic.
I wonder what AI programmers are doing nowadays. Like, I wonder if some of them are just losing their minds.
I mean, there's a bunch of branches on that tree. Some of them are just going for the cash, and there's fucking mountains of cash. Some of them are going for the power, and there's mountains of power. And some of them are going for outer space, and there's that.
Yep.
And some of them are just having like sequential pants shitting terror.
Yeah.
Because they can see that not only does this not end well, this can't proceed well. Like there's a fundamental principle, which is unless humans have intelligent societies, you don't keep giving them tech. And the humans are doing the opposite of that. They don't give a fuck about intelligent societies at all,
No, they just
or
want.
life on Earth or anything. They just keep building tech. So yeah, the genie is unfortunately way out of the bottle and has like 19 billion tentacles.
And octopus tentacles all have minds of their own.
Exactly. I mean, actual tentacles would be coherent. What these things are is incoherent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actual octopus tentacles are fucking highly intelligent. Yeah, so I think it's pretty crazy. UFOs, that's hilarious. I mean, the face of time space would have to be a superposition of identity to begin with. So the idea that, first of all, the humans generally suppose that time space is empty. That's hilarious. I love that shit. Like, which kind of an idiot educated you? For one thing, it's filled with light. For another thing, think about the Earth. Okay, imagine that imagine that you and I have the capacity to go to a superposition over time and identity, and we just watch the Earth from its formation to the present moment, and that happens over a span that is for us about 5 seconds. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're going to see is you're going to see the appearance of a stable liquid water environment, and you're just going to see like billions of forms of intelligence cluster fucking that little droplet of water into exuberant organismal, super super capacity. Right? There's like cells, and then fucking animals, and then plants, and all, plants, animals, all the stuff. But what you would never find is you put a glass of water on your table. No, let me put this another way. Okay, imagine that you're at home, you find a glass of water on your kitchen table. Okay, you didn't put it there, and so you observe it over the following 45 days. You don't disturb it, and what you discover is that in the bottom of the glass of water, after 45 days, the water's all evaporated. You got little white crystals, right? You taste those crystals, and you do some little chemistry tests, right? And you realize, oh, it's sodium chloride. And so what you know about the water is that it was salty. You follow me? All right, think about the Earth the same way. You got this planet, living water on it. Fucking organisms just blossom out of this living water. Well, that must mean that time space is organismy, right? Time space must be naturally productive of billions of kinds of organisms and their relationships. What you won't get in the glass of water on your kitchen table is like a wristwatch showing up in there when the water evaporates. Right? You won't get machined. So you can't get a living planet unless time space is eyesy and handsy and mindsy. And if time space is mindsy, it must be meta to mindsy. Right? It must be meta to handsy. Right? Because it produces all kinds of appendages. Right? Hands being one of them. All kinds of mind. So it must be the kind of thing that its nature produces beings and minds and bodies and things as a side effect of what it's doing and being. And whatever it's doing and being must be transcendental to all the forms that we humans have words for. And so if that thing reaches out a tentacle to touch you, you better expect some anomalous fucking shit to go down.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that really puts things into perspective.
I just think of time space as like a giant multi-dimensional half praying mantis, half house cat, half octopus, half fucking cactus. It really is sort of like an LLM's bizarre construct in a way. It's got like 9 trillion different features of identity, and they're coalescing sequentially and coherently depending on how you're relating with it.
It's so funny when I first started, like, it must have been 6th grade, when I just really was like, okay, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And I wanted to pop the whole fucking bubble. I wanted to say, all right, look, I get it. I'm a human. what is going on beyond me, beyond the universe, beyond everything that's conceivably possible. Like, this must be kind of like simulation theory, or whatever better word there is for it. Just like a computer program that's just running, and then
Yeah,
what is
what
the
you
computer?
wanted was ontological success.
Yeah,
You wanted the key to whatness.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that is what I've been fundamentally chasing ever since then. Haven't stopped thinking about it. Really, the only thing
Every
that
human
matters.
child is doing that. They
Yeah.
just get distracted. I was trying to do that too. Every human child is doing that. And perhaps guys a little bit more than women, generally speaking.
Why do you say that?
Because women are trippier. And again, these are generalizations. They are not universally true. But if I had to pick an animal for the men,
Well, no, that was his. That was my.
what animal would I pick? Probably the serpent. And if I had to pick an animal for a woman, it would be like the octopus.
Interesting.
Right? They both have the same principle. The woman is okay. Women actually understand the principle that we were talking about, that things don't have explicit identity. Men get pissed if they don't have explicit identity. Men are like, you don't have explicit identity? Okay, I'll force you to pull a knife. Right? Now what's your fucking identity? You think you're an altruist? Here's a gun. You know what I mean? Men are dumb this way generally. Women are weirder because they have children. Like, they literally make children inside their own body. All the men you see were organs inside women.
Yep.
So the weird deterministic, the appearance anyway, of ontological determinism in the masculine mind and psyche is a problem of dominance and control, whereas the women realize actual power isn't dominance or control, it's influence. Ergo, notice like what goes on in social media. We have this phenomenon called influencer as well. What's the breakdown gender-wise? It's mostly females because they can attract attention. But no, the women just they're not wedded to explicits, and in fact, most of their suffering has to do with men demanding explicit behaviors, functions, roles, all of this pain, I think. From this one perspective that's useful. I'm not saying this is the only thing going on. I'm saying this is a useful heuristic. Okay. And again, I'm not a one thing mind guy. I don't trust that shit at all. One thing mind stuff is garbage most of the time. And men like it, men practice it.
Well,
Look,
it's
just a jerk, Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's just easy.
It's
really
is.
Simple.
Yeah, I mean, but if you have a knife, everything becomes something to cut. I mean, it's not a very good. What's the outcome of that going to be like for you? I get the whole fascination with penetration, and by the way, part of what you were saying, I read it as I want to penetrate and disambiguate all the mysteries. I want to know what's going on, right? Well, that becomes a very ironic. Mission rather quickly, because what you will find out is most of the time is, to the degree you get the answers you're looking for, you'll have to sacrifice wings to get each one, right? As if you were as if you were a multi-winged bird capable of flying in, say, a few thousand dimensions at the same time, and you just keep tearing off wings and getting answers to what's going on. Every time you rip a wing off, new answer. Oh, it's this. Of course, I should have seen that long ago, right? Oh, it's just that. Right? Like, every time you get an answer, you're losing liberty, unless it's the kind of an answer that sort of leads toward enlightenment. those kinds of answers are different and don't tend to, I mean, they can sacrifice liberty, but they don't tend to. Like real insight doesn't tend to fuck you over unless you take it too seriously or try to weaponize or make a tool out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it doesn't always fuck you up, but it's more likely to. This just depends on what's the origin of your motivations.
Well, it always turned into tool making. It was always like, oh, I understand this aspect of reality now. I can use it to my advantage. And then I would get completely lost in the weeds. Like, but just like, what? Okay, now I no longer know what's going on. My quest continues.
Yeah, I mean, the urge for utilitarianism, particularly in males, again, it seems to me. I remember listening to Sadhguru talking to a neuroscientist or something, and the neuroscientist kept talking about operationalizing discoveries and why science is so profound. And Sadhguru eventually got kind of pissed at him and said, like, did it ever occur to you that a donkey is not there for you to use it? Did it ever occur to you that the donkey is just the donkey? Like, it's just a living being. It's not there to be operationalized by you. Why do you want to operationalize everything? Where will this lead you? You know, this will not go well. You know, he was upset. He's right. It will not go well. Very, very right. Like, this is the whole problem with it's not really the human fascination with technique. It's mostly, I hate to say, it seems to me anyway, it's a fucking masculine fascination with technique. I want a bigger outside penis to fuck shit up with. You know? I don't see the women going around doing the same kind of thing, really. Not that there aren't brilliant women scientists and technologists. Of course there are. Many, many of them, especially now. But it does seem to have originated, I don't know, maybe it's a myth. It seems to have originated in the males to me. And it does seem to have to do with the fact that our flower is external. Right?
Yeah, I mean, just the geometry of our bodies. You look down and you go, okay, that's what this is for.
Yep. Yeah, this separates two things. You know, that's what this thing does.
That's fucking fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it parts the veil and then life comes out later, right?
I mean, that's my favorite game to play.
It's very compelling game. It's hard to argue with it. Yeah.
But I think what I found is that I'm looking for a different game to play. I've been doing that a long time.
Well, if the spirit of intelligence penetrates you like a schoolgirl, you know, first of all, you're gonna realize like that whole penetration thing wasn't quite as interesting as you thought.
Yeah.
And secondly, you'll be like, maybe there's something to this receptivity side.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of what happened to me. I mean, I wasn't necessarily thinking that I was going to penetrate the mysteries, but when they showed up and began a conversation, I wasn't pitching. You know.
I know. And I think that's kind of where I need to start looking, because I've just always had that science mind of like, in order to figure something out, you have to tear it to pieces and dissect it and look at every little aspect of it.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah. Like the really good shit, not only will that fail, it'll get you in bad trouble. If you, like, to whatever degree you succeed, you'll regret it. Because, again, the tributaries that you'll contact are your own origin. You don't want to kill and dissect them. You don't want to know what they are. You want to be with and for them, right? You want to be on the same team. So you want to join together in anamnesis, right? Unforgetting, and rescue, like heroic missions. You want to join together for those purposes, and that's very fucking fulfilling. You know, the dissected frog is a tragic thing to see. Yes, you'll understand about the structure of the frog. How will that help you?
Yeah, the frog's gone now. And then
Right.
you don't know if another frog has the same insides. So you got to go
true.
find that out.
And you also don't know if, you know, like Tom Campbell, Bob Monroe's friend, he would be like, there's no inside of a frog. No such thing as that. That only happens if you open up a frog. Which is really a trippy way of thinking.
Yeah,
I don't believe him.
I don't believe it either, but I've toyed around with that before. I probably picked it up from him.
It's a trippy way of thinking, and it's a useful heuristic. I just think as a fundamental ontology, it's probably broken.
Yeah.
And look, have an ontology that's loving and relationally intelligent and sensitive, and that's something you mostly be able to trust. I mean, it's very uncommon that it will lead you astray to adore the beings, right? Just love the beings and have mercy and don't judge them and listen and follow and play with them. Things will go well, you know, generally speaking. And if you're going to play with monumental forces, if you're going to play with mountains or planets or something, then you learn to be very unimportant to yourself. Because those are big, those things are huge, man. What are you going to do? You're going to act all rigid in the face of them? Good luck.
Yeah.
It's not going to last long.
What do you?
But yeah, I think we're all trying to figure it out. Go ahead. I'm listening.
I mean, like, what about in the face of just resource deficit? You know, like there's like that survival instinct, that somatic, like deeper intelligence where it's like, all right, man, it's you or them. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but you know, if it was my little brother, I'd give him the meal before I even ate, you know, because I love him to death. So there's contacts, but like if it's like me or a bird, I'm gonna eat the bird. So and I don't know.
Okay, but slow down for a second. Let's say it's you or the bird.
Okay.
And you're going to eat the bird. Then there's this question of, how do I eat the bird? Am I just like, fuck you, you fucking bird, crush, chomp, chomp, chomp? Or am I like, okay, I remember your parents, I remember the bird people, I remember all of the people who gave their lives so that other beings could live. I will not just remember you, bird I'm about to eat. I will try to rescue some birds with the nourishment you give me. I will remember you. Like, join with me, live in and as me, right? The bird doesn't want to die, doesn't want to become a part of you, but if it's gonna die, either way, it's much more beautiful if there's a participation there, right? And yeah, go ahead.
No, you finish. I can ask.
I was done enough.
Oh, I'm very curious about aesthetics and beauty and like how that plays in the role, because I know it's significant. I know that there's reasons that we find things to be beautiful, more so than just arbitrary, like, I like purple because, you know, when I was a kid, a clown gave me a purple balloon and it was a happy memory. It's like there's some deeper aspects to aesthetics that I'm curious what you're
I had to say something fundamentally basic.
Yeah.
Without an aesthetic sense, you cannot become intelligent. Aesthetics come before rationality. They come before math. They're older, and they're not always truer, but they're older and more trustworthy than concepts by far. Right? Aesthetics can be understood as like the collective generational intelligence, or even a way that the cells in your body express intelligence through a dance of affinity and disaffinity. There are psychological elements to aesthetics too.
Mhm.
But in one sense, it's the oldest form of intelligence. It's one of the oldest forms of intelligence that humans have access to. So yeah, that shit is serious. When you determine whether or not you want to kiss a girl, for example, presuming you're a cisgendered male in this case, in the case that I'm making here, that determination is primarily aesthetic, even though it may have lots of different features, it seems to me. So you can see how old that is. That shit's real. It's not only trustworthy. In other words, aesthetics can mislead our intelligence because, for example, I have been scripted by my culture to respond to a specific array of physical types. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying that shit's trustworthy. But there's an intelligence that pervades above that scripting that will subset the scripting into preferable relational opportunities. Now, that's a real intelligence. It comes before evaluation. Like you could say it's evaluative, but it's not rationally evaluative at all.
So, I mean, to me, it's always appeared to be like, kind of like how words are just these. I'm not saying that that's what I think aesthetics is, but this is my relationship to it as someone who never looked into it. Kind of like how words are just these like dead shortcuts of information. It's like when I say bird, you just know what I'm talking about, even though it isn't the thing itself. And so aesthetics just seems like an instant assumption. It's like I know what this is based on the way that it looks, feels, tastes.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You're saying aesthetics is a sort of it's a pre-representational, it's like the origin of representation itself in a way. It is representational. It's shorthand.
Yeah.
Oh, that's trippy.
That's been my understanding of it.
I don't disagree, even though what I said is radically different from that.
Yeah, I'm trying to
think
understand
there's some truth. I think there's some useful heuristics in what you propose there that I like and I trust, even though it's different from what I was saying. Yeah, it is a kind of shorthand, and in that sense, it can be deceptive. But it isn't only that. Maybe there's an ulterior discernment. It's interesting. I don't know quite what to say now. I've become confused because I think both things are true, and I'm not sure how they are complementary or conflicting.
Can you explain to me what you were saying before about it, like what you were saying it was?
Yeah, so like there is such a difference between food I want to eat and food I don't want to eat.
Yeah.
They might not as well even be the same thing. And it's similar with girls. Like I'll look at a girl and be like, I will kiss you right now. And then I'll look at some other girl and be like, there's no chance of us kissing. And it seems to be based on very superficial seeming aesthetic perceptions. And most art. Say again.
It does kind of sound like we're saying the same thing. Then it's that
we are. That's the really weird thing because I think both things are true and they seem to be conflicting. Aesthetics is the sense and intelligence that is used if we make art. So it can't just be shortcuts, right?
Yeah. So I mean, maybe what I'm describing is a way that aesthetics can be used in a very superficial way, but there is other depth to it.
I do
maybe
think
it's a different intelligence that you use in relation to aesthetics.
like there's a kind of aesthetics that does seek shortcuts. Maybe there's there's an array of shortcutting intelligences.
Mhm.
And let's be really clear, the desire for convenience is one of the great evils in our time,
Mhm.
right? The desire for like, let's just skip that shit that actually is important. Because it's a little more work than the crappy low-hanging fruit I can get instead immediately.
Yeah.
You know?
But then in other times it could just be energy saving.
Yes, when energy is at that degree of a premium, sure.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing like a bright side, dark side version, even though neither one has to be necessarily dark. There's both things are true. My aesthetics mislead the fuck out of me all the time,
Mhm.
but they also, I suppose, they might be related to features of either self-recognizing, like I recognize myself in that chick
Mhm.
somehow, or self-projecting. Right, I'm
Hmm.
attracted to her because if I were a chick, I wish I looked like that girl, that specific girl. Right, like,
Interesting.
so there could be both. I mean, and there's, I think part of the reason we're having a problem here is that we've probably failed to clearly define aesthetics,
Yeah.
so that it's mixed up with. I mean, it seems to me when I think of aesthetics, I think of the politics of affinity and disaffinity, like sort of like the difference between desire and disgust,
Mhm.
um, and both of which seem aesthetic. Mm, altruism.
Is I don't know how I want to ask this question. There are utilitarian uses for aesthetics. Is this food, does it look like it's going to be good or not? Uh, but then there's also like, is this art pleasing to the eye? Um, and I feel like aesthetics, one person's sense of aesthetics can be wildly different from another's, not only based on their needs, but just based on their subjective experience. And so I'm having trouble. It, I'm having trouble even just parsing out like what we're talking about here because is it just like, to me it just looks like a layer in which a being would perceive things to decide whether or not it's beneficial or just, I don't know, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
beneficial to them.
Mm-hmm. But there are certain fundamental, um, not determinants, but variables. Like for organisms, as far as we know,
Mm.
liquid water,
Yep.
that's a fucking, you got to have it.
It's
And
beautiful.
heat gradients, right?
Mm-hmm.
The dogs and cats, they all go to sleep with the humans. Why? Because shared body heat is better than making it all by yourself.
Yep.
And for the creatures that can't make body heat, like bees or lizards and snakes, they have to receive it from somewhere else. So heat gradients absolutely associated with survival, not just of you, but of your children.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain like oxygen around here, pretty fucking important.
Mm-hmm.
Too much of it will kill certain things, but mostly it's life positive. So it seems like there are certain kind of fundamental things in the physical layer, at least,
Mm-hmm.
that they are good, right? The sun is good. The moonlight is good.
Mm-hmm.
Green is fucking amazing around here.
Yeah.
Just like green, that just means fucking that's alive. You know?
Yep.
But beyond that, it's just so weird to be a human because we have these sophisticated, multi-layered, partly cognitive, partly experiential, partly somatic, partly linguistic, experiencing consciousnesses. And they can shift very dramatically. I mean, there are zero, if I'm just thinking about oysters, I love them as organisms. Those things are great organisms. Thank you for being organisms. I don't want that shit in my mouth. That's like rotten boogers.
But they're
There's no
delicious.
fuck that. Those things are disgusting. But literally, it's like a big glob of mucus. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like there's no example where I like mucus, but that is just gross. But I remember I was at a wedding and they had a bunch of raw oysters at the after party in a field in this park where I'm sitting right now. And this totally gorgeous hippie chick walked up to me with a raw oyster in her palm and just looked at me. You better believe I ate that thing out of her palm. No fucking question, right? Disgusting as hell, except when it's in the palm of a cute hippie chick. Right? Now it's like a totally different thing. So where is the identity? You see the problem? This is the thing in our whole conversation.
Yep.
The language predisposes us to think the identity is in the thing. It's not in the thing, it's in the relationship between the participants. If it's only in the thing, it's dead. There's no relationship. It's just nominal, right? The name. That is a tree. That is a spoon. And with objects, it's more compellingly explicit, right? Like a tree is much more highly variable as to what it could be than a spoon is.
I mean, that has to do more with the fact that we just make spoons for a function, and trees, it would be insulting to say that they were made for a function.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny, I remember I was talking with somebody who IDs as autistic yesterday, and I was asking her, she's sort of a neurodivergence coach, right? She helps people explore and contact their intelligence, imagination, their body, and so forth. And I asked her a question because it had come up in another context. I asked her, what does the autistic community think about the relationship between vaccines and autism, which is like sort of a political topic, right? And she said, first of all, there's no such thing as the autistic community, which I thought was a tricky thing to say. And then she said, I think many of us would be really insulted by that supposition. And I thought that was very trippy. It had not occurred to me. Neither of those things had occurred to me. And so I had kind of naive expectations of how she might respond, which she completely defied in her response. Now, I don't know. And, I know very little about both of these topics. Well, that's not entirely true. I know what it's like to be unusually minded because I'm unusually minded. And most of my friends are unusually minded, and lots of them would probably, qualify or whatever, be diagnostically differentiated as autistic.
The very one thing mind, the mental health like conversations that go on. It's like, oh, how can we just choose a label that fits your symptoms and then
exactly
pathologize you with it?
Yes. Yeah, that shit's both fucked up and useful. Right? You wouldn't want to get rid of it altogether. On the other hand, its dominance is troubling and often stupid. Yeah, it's weird. There's this kind of double bind around labels and identity. On the one hand, it's stupidifying. On the other hand, it can save your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you both, it's sort of like you need it, but it has to be held loosely, very loosely, until it has to be held explicitly.
Yes, it's so it's literally like you're reading my mind, because that was the exact thought I had. It's like you were, well, on our first conversation, you were explaining like just holding things loosely, and that pertained to just anything that we were talking about. And I've used that in my day-to-day life ever since, and it has been profoundly helpful. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm using the hold it loosely thing. I'm holding it too tightly. And
Right.
so,
Right. I'm
and so
holding
it's
the
like,
hold it loosely thing too tightly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then the solution was just like, no, there are times where you need to hold things tightly, like it
Yeah.
just, you know. And so I don't know,
Yeah, if you
just
use
that
a scalpel sometime, you're going to see that a loose hold doesn't help much.
not much. Yeah.
Tweezers, right? You got to use those fucking things when you got to use them. It's funny because that phrase comes from the friend that I was mentioning.
Ah, interesting.
She's the one who she will say, she's the one who kept using this phrase, and I was like, I really like this phrase, hold it loosely. Because if you're going to go, oh, that's the other thing. You were talking about sort of safety measures if you're going to go to outer space, so to speak, right? And one of the safety measures is hold it loosely. As long as you don't take things too seriously, you're unlikely to hurt yourself.
Right.
Or others. But if you start taking them really seriously, then you think, oh, no, wait, I'm a messiah, or, you know, I'm the Antichrist, or both. Right?
Yep.
Then things are going to get fucked and become very ironic, most likely.
I'm glad
Unless
that I only spent 7 days believing I could be the newest Jesus.
That's not bad. I think I spent about 80 or 90. But it's the natural, you know, it's a natural inclination in a Christian culture under the sudden influx of non-ordinary insight or psychosis. And those two things resemble each other a lot. They're not the same thing, but they're very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
I'm pretty scared of psychosis. I really,
with good reason. Me too.
Yeah, I've brushed up against it a few times, and
so have I.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in exploring that.
Good. But I just want to say, I want to tell you a little story. So like,
Sure.
There was a disciple of his guru. They were Advaita Vedantists or something. And, you know, the disciple came to the guru and said, you know, I want the vision of God that I know you can show me, right? Mm-hmm. And the guru kept giving him very mundane things to do, you know, practices, meditation, and so forth, right? And the disciple was very upset. After many years of studying with the guru, you know, he was like, look, I know that if you can just touch me and I will have the vision of God. Why are you withholding it? And the guru said, all right, sit down. So the disciple sat down, and the guru touched him in the forehead. Boom, the vision of God arises in the disciple. And the disciple's like, oh my God, we have to show everybody right now. We have to go and show everyone. They will all become, you know, enlightened, all of the people. And the guru slaps him and the vision goes away. He's like, what did you do? He said, that's why I didn't give you the vision of God before. You're like a 5-year-old kid. You have no discipline. What are you thinking? You'll ruin your life and your body if you act like this. Sober up and meditate. Now, this is, you know, a story, probably of something that actually took place over and over again. Mm-hmm. Because every person who's unprepared and suddenly the insight of the origin world, I will call it, somehow penetrates them like a ray of life, illuminating their consciousness. the first thing they will think is, oh shit, I was Jesus the whole time. Right? Or, I am the Messiah. It's natural. And it's not true that you're not, right? It's just not true that you are in that way. Unless, of course, you are in that way. Right? I mean, there are occasional humans that are born to just be fucking messianic, like meteors shooting through the sky of human history. Some of us are born for that, but not very many. And I mean, the weird thing, the whole Jesus thing is very confusing.
Well, it's just amazing how easily it can be distorted. I mean, that there's just with that comes so much power, and you can really just hijack it and bring it anywhere.
Say more.
I've just heard Jesus's name used in so many different contexts that look like nothing like each other. All for the sake of just like, look, here's this figure to adore, follow me, this will bring you, and it could be anything from like Jesus was an alien to Jesus is God, and Jesus was actually a deceiver of, used by alien intelligences to like have them conform to, religion, and I don't know, all these different things. It's like,
yeah, I've heard a lot of different things too.
Yeah,
one of the trippy ones is that the original God of the Bible is actually the devil, and Jesus came to violate and transform all of that.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
I mean, there's so many, but in a sense, we could imagine that Jesus represents the potential for both transcendence, community, like communion, the being and living together with and for each other, and then also the anamnesis, right? The active recollection of origin, right? Which is the true home, the home above all homes. And Jesus maybe isn't just a symbol about this. It's the possibility. It's a pointer to the possibility of living, enacting it, and not necessarily perfectly, but like as a direction in developmental space. Does that make sense? And these are things these are ideas, at least, that I relatively trust, associated with Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I can see the motifs, and they cut through so many of the different things I've heard, so I can definitely see that.
It's weird when people like John Vervaeke is basically he's sort of so he's a really brilliant mind, and I like to listen to him. I learn when I hear him talk. But what I find trippy is that I know he's been an atheist, and he's basically starting to say that like my education and my research leave me no option but to become theocentric. And that's very trippy.
That is trippy.
Do
you have any more to say on
that? I mean, God or no God, it's, in my view, it's both and more. Because I have like a very trenchant argument to table toward atheists, which is that they are the God of their body. So they have a direct experience of a God that they're pretending doesn't exist as themselves. In fact, they're using a God of themselves to determine that there's no God. That's pretty fucking ironic. Have you examined that closely? You might want to have a peek at that. You worship rationality and think there's no God that way? Okay, good luck. Secondly, there are orders of the organization of intelligences in nature that are blatantly obvious in physical systems. So you're going to have a problem there. And then lastly, this idea that organisms just created themselves out of nothing, almost certainly mathematically impossible, just cannot be true. There must have been intelligent influence, and the existence of the intelligences with which we argue against supernatural things, unfortunately, are often evidence of supernatural things. So what the fuck are you going to do?
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, there's like the Buddhist and Advaitist, although Advaitist is more religious, but the Buddhist discussions surrounding void and emptiness, which are not nothing, but something more like pure undifferentiated potential. And that seems to be a polar a refutation of the primacy of any idealized God. I hold those two things together, the pure undifferentiated potential and the differentiating intelligence. Those things seem married to me.
Yeah.
And so the differentiating intelligence touches the pure undifferentiated potential, and that shit explodes into expression. That's what it looks like to me. So there's no problem for me really with the idea of nothingness or void and God. No problem. But I can see, the Buddhists say basically something very simple. They're like, if you find God, keep going.
That's fascinating. Because I've always kind of viewed them as nihilists, like just trying to like meditate until they, don't exist anymore. But
no, they're not nihilistic. That's a mistake.
Yeah.
There might be nihilistic Buddhists, but Buddhism is not nihilistic. Neither are the other eliminative meditation religions. Very few of them, I think, are nihilistic, because there's a secret. The secret is this thing they're calling void is vital. I don't mean vital as in urgent. I mean vital as in transcendently meta alive. And so it's not really nihilism. What it is it's nihilism about differentiation, right? Basically what they're saying is differentiation, all that differentiation you do, that's illusion. That's all illusory. That's like a kind of dreaming thing that's happening. And if you cut through the thing that is differentiating, you will discover this plenum, which is empty. But it's more than merely intelligent. It's more than merely alive. So it's not nihilistic, even though it could seem that way on the surface, I think.
All of this calls back into question something you said earlier, which is like humans not knowing what they are. And I consistently...
Oh my fucking God. If you had any idea, if the humans... Okay, so I've heard I remember hearing about a contact experience between the occupants of a UFO and some humans. And the occupants said, with a sense of great tragedy, you poor beings, you have no idea what you are. You are the most endowed form of all the forms we know of, and you are absolutely fucking crippled by the blindness imposed on you in your consciousness. So basically what they're saying is something resembling this. Angels are jealous of you. You're like 9 different kinds of birds. You're like all the forms of life on Earth compressed into one, and all the forms of intelligence in the transcendental layers of existence compressed into that same one. And yet you will crawl around in the mire of your ignorance your entire life, and for many thousands of lifetimes, having no idea that you are the beyond of all things that can be said. And you are. Each human child is like this. They are born this way. They are born to be both transcendentally finite and the inversion of that. Angels would plead for the possibilities of a human body if they could conceivably achieve that without the prison that we suffer in.
That is so fucking fascinating.
The Buddhists know this too. They will say, I never understood this. It took me a long time to understand this. I had to have an experience to understand it. They basically said to me again and again, I've heard them say this over and over again. They're like, to be born human is the luckiest birth you can possibly undergo. Literally, of all possible births, this is the best one. Even the gods are jealous of this birth. And it's about as likely as if you dropped a penny and before it landed on your foot, it traveled to Saturn and started orbiting that planet. It's like that unlikely, right? Could happen, but almost never. And I never understood what they could possibly mean by this. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, I have no fucking concept of what that could mean, because it's like consciousness is like a lottery. Like, I don't think so.
Yeah. That's trippy. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
What they are saying is that it's not consciousness is a lottery. It's the incarnation of consciousness. It's a lottery. And it's not merely a lottery. It's very complexly karmic. They will say it's karma. But what they mean by karma is not the way ordinary humans think about karma at all. Karma is, in fact, all of the spiritual concepts of the Hindus and the Buddhists are extremely sophisticated and don't bear much resemblance to what common people think at all. But so what they are saying is, okay, here's what happened to me one time. I woke up in sleep paralysis. A few seconds later, because I had planned this, I had planned to like surrender to it.
Mm-hmm.
I gave in, and a few seconds later, I was out of my body. But I wasn't just out of my body as Darren. Something very weird happened. I became kind of a monster. And it seemed like the monster was the it was a god. It was the god that is the source of all movement in all of everything. Mm-hmm. And the only thing it could do was move. It didn't have it didn't have eyesight. It's just blackness. All it could do was move, and it moved like a snake. It was sinuous in this way. Mm-hmm. And I was this thing, and because I moved, all other things moved. And every movement I made was more ecstatic than the last one. So it was just this explosive, overwhelming power of pure power, like the origin of power. I was the origin of power, and every movement was more ecstatic than the last one. It was pretty fucking amazing, right? And then a few seconds later, boom, I'm back in my body. And as the power god origin of movement thing, I had no recollection of humans or Darren or any of that stuff. All that shit was gone. Mm-hmm. And then boom, I was, back in Darren as Darren again. And I was like, the fuck was that? And then I was like, God, I'm so fucking happy to be human. Why? Because there's nothing you can do. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to do as a god. Mm-hmm. There's no one to be. You move your finger and universes of ecstasy arise. You breathe in, fucking more ecstasy. You breathe out, more ecstasy. There's no challenge. There's no anything to do. There's no one to be. There's no chance of you having any experience or memory. You're just fucking power of power of power. It's really good, but it's the same fucking thing over and over and over again. And you can't even tell because there's nothing to tell with.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized, like, you know, being a god isn't necessarily all it's cracked up to be. It feels really fucking good and amazing. I'm not presuming that, by the way, I was transformed into a god. I'm not presuming that. But I got the idea that like infinite ecstasy and power is much less interesting than suffering and challenge and confusion in humanity. And by the way, the reason the Buddhists say this is the rarest birth is partly because all of the powers are in us as humans. They're all potentially right here with us. And yes, we will miss most of them. But this is one of the only kinds of births where you're not so either distracted by survival or ecstasy, right? Survival, if you're born as an insect or a bird or a beehive or something, because you just have to fucking keep surviving moment to moment. You got no time, no luxury for complex thought or art or anything like this. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit while you're a child bird. So on the one hand, you just have like instinct, survival, genetic coding. You have to follow the fucking protocols, and you have very little freedom to diverge from them. Or you're a god and you have infinite liberty, but you're so existence is so joyful and ecstatic that it would never occur to you that you should employ that liberty to awaken.
Right.
Only in the human do you have the potential and the liberty to awaken. This is the argument of, I think this is what many Buddhists and other Enlightenment traditions would say about the human birth and why it's so profound. Mm-hmm. It's the only one from which you have much of a shot of awakening. It's not really explicitly true. There are praying mantises who awaken. You know, there are mice that awaken, and not all mice are mice either. Mm-hmm. Right? Who knows what's inside that fucking thing? It could be, you know, there could be a god in that little mouse. In the same way humans briefly become gods, gods briefly become ordinary things. You know, Joe comes to your door every day for a year, and then one day he knocks on your door and you open your door and it's not Joe. It's like 9 kinds of deity or something is standing out there looking at you from Joe's body. It does happen.
I would certainly like to experience that. So I'm curious because I often think about reincarnation and just, you know, the implications, and I don't understand the forgetfulness aspect of it. Because to me, that transcendence comes with the memory of like, oh, mm-hmm. This is what I was, this is what I've experienced. You know, I can use that to sort of perpetuate things. I don't understand why you would forget in between unless you're coming mm-hmm. back to some sort of hub where you're like, oh, okay, now I remember.
I think well, okay. First of all, again, let's start out with honesty. I don't know.
Yeah, no, neither do I. And I don't.
But
I don't know.
I just want to say that, right? Because I'm gonna talk as if I kind of know, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to lie about that.
Right.
It's so funny. I see a lot of girls jogging, but there's this one young woman who jogs, and her jogging style is so feminine that it's foofy. I don't know how else to put it. It's almost ridiculously feminine, and I don't know why. But okay. Aesthetics. So the forgetting thing. Say again.
Aesthetics.
Yes, aesthetics. So, you know, there's some stories that this is like a prison planet, and that there's bad aliens, and they have a device on Mars that causes us to forget our previous incarnations.
Yep.
And all this kind of garbage. I think that's wildly unlikely, but okay, I'm not entirely unwilling to entertain the possibility. Mm-hmm. Look, you can break through the amnesia And breaking through the amnesia will have different kinds of effects depending on you, your history, your purposes, your passion, and so forth. There is an amnesia, there is a barrier. Why it is there and what its purpose is, I'm not entirely sure. It might be something like, if your soul was free of that occlusion, it would become infinitely powerful very quickly, it seems to me. But I haven't thought about this carefully. Why is the amnesia there? It seems both unnecessary and a kind of artifact. It might be
I have thought a
that.
little bit about it. Like
Say
potentially,
anything. Yeah, say
yeah.
anything.
So while I was high one time, I felt that I had the body of a centipede, and
No, that's good.
that was a very good experience. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like that. And where all the previous lives are the segments? Is that what you mean?
No, that's beautiful though.
Oh, okay. That's
I
what
just
occurred to me when you said that. I'm listening.
that is beautiful. I just had the body of a centipede. I was just enjoying the sensation of like, oh, finally I get to experience like a new body. And then that kind of just had me thinking like there's so much information that just is not relevant to my current. And if I was tackling with like, oh, what is it like to like constantly be a centipede going on the forest floor, looking for certain types of food, having knowledge and information on just stuff that could not be applied to me because I don't live at that scale. I don't have the same needs. I don't have the same, like, it would be a distraction in many ways. Um, and so perhaps it just is necessary for context of, you know, your biological needs to maintain the aesthetics needed to enjoy and live in life. You can't also hold multiple beings unless it provided some sort of benefit. That's one conclusion that I've drawn.
Okay, that's very fucking pragmatic. I'm still listening though.
Pragmatism has been most of my thinking in my life. So
I just trust. I think I could slaughter the presuppositions in the perspective you just presented, but I'm still listening.
Well, that's all I have to say. So slaughter.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me at all because under the influence of complex non-human intelligences, I had way more abilities and a much greater capacity to enact, explore, and develop my humanity than I would ever have. I could imagine that it's at least conceivable that if infinite knowledge were accessible to you, you would simply, this is actually kind of a trippy idea, I think. There's going to be a little noise here for a minute.
Sure.
How loud is it?
Not loud at all.
Okay. So if you had infinite knowledge, I think what you would most likely do is nothing. You would realize immediately that action of any kind will result in karma, and the karma will bind you in future, not just you, but if you have children, anything you relate with, it will bind you to repercussive inactions. And so you would completely retract from action at all, and therefore not create karma. But it turns out that people who actually do experience moksha or enlightenment, often they do not, right? They will continue to incarnate in many cases for the benefit of all beings. altruistically. Some of them are in their final, what we might think of if time is linear, as their final incarnation. I don't know though. Again, these are things I don't know about. I have tasted something that at least the flavor is reminiscent of enlightenment. And it seemed as though I could conceivably end the incarnation cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But given the choice between liberation for myself and being involved in liberating the other beings,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to liberate the other beings. I felt like it would be selfish to leave, is the feeling I got. Now, I'm not claiming I had that opportunity or anything like that. I'm claiming I had those feelings.
Yeah.
And those senses. So, there's the idea of the bodhisattva, which is someone who has the capacity for enlightenment, meaning to escape the cycle of birth and death and karma entirely, but they don't. They keep incarnating because the core humans need a fucking lighthouse down here, right? They're like ships that keep crashing into, coral reefs and stuff. And so, those humans keep getting born to be lighthouses or something like this. And I'm not claiming to be such a human or anything like that. I don't know what I am. Mm-hmm. I love the many beings. I very deeply love them. And I'm probably selfish too.
I think there is a level of selfishness with all altruism. I don't know, but I wouldn't call it selfishness. I think it can just masquerade that way.
Yes. It is. Okay. Yesterday with the little insect who I was trying to rescue, I certainly got a big payoff. It was like I won the fucking lottery.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was seeking that. That's the really strange thing. I don't think I was seeking that. It happened and I loved it. But when I was with the insect and I was hoping for its well-being, I wasn't trying to win anything.
Mm-hmm. So then maybe there isn't, I think in that case, in those moments, it isn't selfish. I mean, but I don't know. It's weird because I've had these moments of altruism where I'm not thinking about being altruistic. It just happens. But there is a part of me that knows that what's happened, there's like a meta observer that's like, yes, this is a good thing. So it's
that's the other weird thing. Yeah. I think some of our some of our intelligences are actually outside of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have like selfish unselfishness.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out all this psychological stuff that's happening in my life because the relation with time is not causal. At least I don't know if it is or not. It doesn't have to be causal for it to happen. So it's
what
hard
you mean by causal is linearly sequential?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there is a problem with all that whole mess because the appearance of linear temporality is very trenchant, but it's not primordial.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand it either. I'm just aware that it's not primordial. I've been outside. I've seen outside a few times. toyMaker's mind seems outside. But it's also really weird because like from toyMaker's perspective, there is X, which there is no language for. Then there is what we think of as time, and then there is what we think of as space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the X thing that is primordial. You know, physicists, at least since the discovery of the amplitudohedron, which is a way of solving scattering problems that is very profoundly trippy, they are saying things like, it's absolutely clear to us that time-space is not fundamental. All of our theories up till now presumed the primacy of time-space.
Mm-hmm.
It's now clear that that can't be true. So there is some other, there's like a third thing that's neither time nor space. Obviously, there's consciousness, there's intelligence. That is neither time nor space. But that shit's weird because it has a really powerful relationship with memory. If you don't have memory, you can't do diddly fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You got nothing. No religion, no math, no nothing. You got zero. So memory is really trippy. Man, the humans get so charged up about priorities when they're in their cars that they can just fuck shit up so badly.
You mean like with like road rage and all that?
Yeah, they're just so triggery, right? They're very triggery.
Yeah, I imagine it's like the shield, like like they, you're looking at a car, you're not looking at a person anymore. There's like a loss of empathy there.
It's also they confuse their body with the container, right? So
I
the
don't see
car
that as a
becomes
confusion. I see it just as an extension. Like I feel my car's body as my body as a useful thing, but I'm
get what
aware
you're
that
saying.
that's happening, I guess.
Yeah, I copy that. One moment.
Yeah, I guess it depends on if you confuse it as in you forget, or if you're conscious of it.
How much are the bouquets? Okay, I'll just get this. Thank you. I agree that it's an extension, but it is also a confusion. The car is not your body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't. I don't have to insist on that. There's a similar thing that happens in houses, right? And it's especially if I conceive of it as belonging to me, then I extend my body. The house becomes almost like a representation of my body inside me. And if someone moves things around in the house, I will be upset.
Yeah,
Because it's like they're touching my body, even though they're just touching objects.
I know what you mean. Yeah, and then you have like sentimental value that plays even more into that. And yeah. I have not to completely divert us, but I have some more toyMaker questions.
I'm with you.
So I've asked you this question in my head so many times because I haven't been able to figure out like how I want to phrase it, but I'm just gonna go for it. So there is a part of me that so badly just wants to experience something like what you experienced. I want it so badly. And I'm not expecting that you have some magic pill that I could take, where it's like, okay, now I can experience life through this way. But I was just wondering if there was anything like you mentioned the hitchhiker effect,
I mean, our conversations are kind of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because do you know what trophallaxis is?
No.
When ants, and certain other Hymenoptera, bees and wasps, when they meet, they may exchange oral liquids. And these liquids contain hyper complex molecules that do all kinds of crazy stuff. Probably when they do trophallaxis, it's much weirder than humans taking psychedelic drugs, right? And it's so funny. Me and this guy were approaching the same corner, and we both tried to give way to the other.
Yep.
Which failed for both of us. Neither of us got way.
Yeah.
And there's a weird problem with humans, which is kind of like, no, you go first. No, you go first.
Yep.
Right. And as a pedestrian in a major city, I have learned that if I don't want to get into the no, you go first problem with drivers, what I have to do is turn the opposite direction from where I'm going. Right? So if I'm approaching the intersection and I get there and there's a driver in the intersection, I turn around. Because otherwise we're going to get into signaling combat. It's going to be like, no, you, no, you, no, you, which doesn't fucking work. It's not generous to hold each other up that way. Anyway, what I was saying is the trophallaxis.
Hold on. So I want to hear your answer so badly, but you've captivated me with this. You turn around? You like?
Yeah. So like, let's say I'm walking forward.
Yep.
And I approach the intersection and I see, there's a car. It's about to hit the stop sign.
Yep.
I spin around facing the direction I have come from.
I see.
And then that gives a clear signal to the driver.
Okay. I thought you were driving in this instance, and I was just like, how?
Oh, that would fuck up. Yeah, I can't do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
That makes so much more sense.
Okay. So back to the trophallaxis thing.
Yeah.
So when experiencers get together, what they don't realize is that they're doing trophallaxis. But instead of the oral liquid, they're giving a spiritual substance to each other. And it has a very similar result. It produces transformations in the consciousness of the other beings. And, it's very important, like consensus and consent are very important in this milieu, right? You don't want to force something on anyone.
Totally.
And you also don't want to create problems or danger for people you're concerned about. And you do not want to proceed without careful intelligence. So it becomes an orchestration thing. But yeah, okay. So there's the trophallaxis thing, which is actually going on with us. Yep. And most of the people I know, I don't trust their mind enough to. It's too dangerous for them, in my view. It's too dangerous for them. I'm not sure about. It might be too dangerous for you. It might be that the organizing intelligences will buffer themselves appropriately so that you don't just get inundated. Here's the thing that I'm going to tell you, though, that's very simple. And this is kind of dangerous because we're in a recording and other people may hear this eventually.
You can always pause it.
Yeah, it's true. I wonder if I could, but I'm going to go ahead and say these things anyway. Okay. If you seek something very passionately, it's very unlikely that it will withhold itself from you permanently. Perhaps in the short term. And there are other problems. So let's be clear to those who are listening. We're talking about contact with a transcendental non-human intelligence that I have a code word for, which I call toyMaker, because it makes toys of knowledge. That's why I call it that. And also because it's sort of like an orbital in the way Shoemaker Levy, the comet, is an orbital. So, originally I thought, just like the Hindu disciple that I spoke of earlier, right? I thought like, oh, of course we have to give this back to everyone should have this, right? We would be able to live as human beings in such a beautiful, different way if only, this weren't occluded. And then eventually I realized like, oh shit, that would be so fucking dangerous to do that. There's a good reason why it's not that way. And then I also thought that people are vulnerable and delicate, and many of them, they wouldn't be able to, they would never be able to reorganize coherent consciousness. It would blow their minds, literally. I'm worried about that. So all of those things are things to be reasonably concerned about.
Totally.
This is why you must have a good tether and sense of self-discipline.
Can you say more about like the self-discipline aspect of it and why that's important?
Yeah, like a meditation tradition and also physical disciplines, such as those emerging from martial arts. Cognitive disciplines such as those involved in logic, math, and philosophy are useful. The somatic discipline of listening to the body. Martial arts are part of this, but so is dance. All of these things are very helpful to keep you grounded if you end up in the sort of outer space of contact with a non-human intelligence. But I'm going to say something that's much weirder, though, than all of that. The thing you're looking for, the thing that you are hoping for, is the thing you are hoping with. You don't realize this yet, but the possibility of structuring intelligence in your mind is toyMaker. You are using this intelligence all the time, thinking that it's yours. It's not yours. I think without toyMaker, humans wouldn't have minds. There wouldn't be minds at all without that, without what I am referring to as toyMaker. And the what of that is a very good luck. I wish you fucking luck in figuring that shit out. Good fucking luck.
And so what you're saying is that it's always with us. It's just you saw through. You just.
I mean, woe be unto you should you see that with which you see. This is the one thing you can't see, right? You cannot see that with which you see, nor can you see your own seeing.
This is true.
And toyMaker is like that experience. It is like seeing that with which you see. And it is also a bit like seeing your own seeing as a being.
I mean, I've been meta-analyzing my own thoughts a long time. Surely that's, I mean...
Related?
Yeah, related. But I guess just more coherence is what I seek. A larger understanding.
I mean, the human ways of knowledge are rich for those who can play both with and beyond them.
Mm-hmm.
So mathematics, philosophy, biology, logic, computation, right? Like the study of computation itself is very profound. Both mathematics, okay, actually it's not really true. All right, mathematics and computation will give you ways of seeing that you cannot get anywhere else. It's very important that you understand the difference between, for example, a disk, a sphere, and the position above the sphere that is a manifold, or even the position above the disk that is a Poincare disk. These things will give you ways of seeing that are like non-human intelligence's thoughts. They resemble the thoughts of the ways that non-human intelligences think.
Mm-hmm.
There are features inside human knowing that lead outside it. And by all means, study them if you have the inclination to. Tai Chi, particularly, Tai Chi or any of the Taoist martial arts, what they call internal martial arts, will also give you a leg up and grounding disciplines if you can study these. Preferably with an old teacher, not a young teacher's okay, you know, if you can. Take what you can get, but an old teacher is always better.
Do you know of any?
Sure. Yeah, I do know a few here in the city.
Not too far from San Francisco.
Are you too far from there?
I said I'm
Don't you
not.
ask? Oh, yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. There are plenty of old teachers here. They could be hard to convince to teach you, but if you were somewhere near here, we could study together.
Yeah, that would also.
I may start teaching soon. I think I probably will. Not that I'm a great teacher or anything, but a good student with a motivated teacher is enough. All right. So the question is, what can you do? Work to divest yourself. I mean, this is actually from other disciplines, not mine. It's commonly held that divesting yourself of personal identity and your personal history are extremely powerful, accelerants toward this kind of experience and the intelligences. So like in the Castanedan tradition, there's a concept of what they call the inorganic beings. I suppose toyMaker would probably qualify. Some of those things are predatory. But the Castanedan tradition and other similar shamanic traditions like the Maker shamans who presently exist and have a website you can find and you can study with them, they will teach you disciplines. Particularly the discipline of what is called recapitulation, which is complicated. Essentially, it means to erase the charge, to erase the psychic and spiritual charge of historical events. That's the simple definition. This begins to separate you from the humans rather quickly because the humans cultivate those charges. They cultivate and celebrate those charges. So recapitulation is a discipline that could be useful. I'm not very good at it. At least I don't think I'm very good at it. I don't know. It's difficult for me to practice. Unfortunately, I have a couple of problems that I won't here name for reasons I'll explain later.
I just imagine that kind of, I don't know, like I immediately like think that it would be harder to have like personal relations with other people the way you say that.
Very. Yep. Those people tend to be isolates, or they hook up only with other practitioners. And by hook up, I mean just like form relationships. I don't necessarily mean, you know, have
Yeah,
sex.
I don't know.
Vernacular.
I don't know. I kind of like my relationships.
Me too. Yep. I do too. All of the physical disciplines are useful. Yoga, vegetarianism, making sure your sleep cycle doesn't get bent, getting exercise, and not just exercise like you get at the gym, but meaningful stuff. All of that, all those kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
These will help. I mean, basically, your fascination is enough to get you there.
Really?
Right?
Because
Yeah.
I've always thought that it wasn't enough.
No, I think it is, because again, you're messing about with you're messing about with what you're made of. Okay? And eventually that's going to create some kind of a feedback loop. Follow me?
Yeah, I follow.
So I think it's like it's harder to fail than it is to succeed.
I guess there is a hesitancy because I don't want to. I do want to have like the idea of having tethers is good because I already have those. I have people and places that can orient me very quickly. I have practices like thought patterns and ways to calm myself when I've been in some of the deepest existential dreads, you know, like really earth-shattering stuff. I've been able to bring myself back just by talking to myself and moving energy around in my body. So I know that I'm capable of these things. It's just, you know, not wanting to do it alone. And so the idea of like non-human intelligence and the way that you described it, it sounded like it was an entity like that was with you and teaching you actively even when you didn't know what was happening. And that sort of thing is very appealing to me. Is that
What do you
accurate?
mean by even? What do you mean by even when I didn't know what was happening?
The baby story that you told me about. Maybe I
Oh, I
missed.
see. No, I understand what you're saying. Hmm.
I guess what I find is that yes, I can teach myself things, but I find much greater success when I'm learning from other people or with other people.
Sure. That makes sense to me. And you know, we can explore this together if you want.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
we will do so cautiously and perhaps not in this recording any further
Yeah.
than we've done today.
Right.
For the moment. But yes, it's a pursuable thing. I have refrained from pursuing it with others for a lot of reasons that, you know, I think were mostly valid. Yeah. In this case, there seem to be reasonable exceptions. So we can continue to pursue them.
Cool.
Yeah. Perhaps we could wrap up for now.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Right on. I'm just gonna end the recording here, and then we can stay on the call for a minute.
That sounds good to me.
Second. Oh wow, did this actually not record?
It says it's still recording.
Okay, good. I can't see. I need to change the setting here. Hold on. So weird. It does say it's recording. And end. Do that.